All right, okay, I see a hand shooting up. Let's get started.
Hi. I can understand more now of not normalizing the whole idea of any of it, but I do have a question about cell-based meat. Yeah. But I do have a question that if we could market it for cat food.
Yeah, that actually was a question that I had that we didn't get to, and there were 2 cards from the audience about that. So, all right, Karen. And here, let's do this.
Now, the question seemed to be, could cell-based meat be marketed for cat food? One thing that everybody should understand about the $16+ billion pet industry is that it is a dumping place for all the animal refuse, if you will, from the meat, poultry, and dairy industry. So pet food is based upon the animal industry. So the animal industry is looking for a place to be able to get rid of all of its billions and billions of tons of animal stuff that can't be fed to humans, or that's just excess, and all the baby chicks from the egg industry, et cetera. So I guess I would say that, and then the animal industry also says that pet food is a way of recycling all of this stuff in a way that's environmentally responsible. In other words, instead of just dumping all these dead animals, which they do anyway, but even more dead animals on the ground, or putting them in the water or in wells, or doing whatever they're going to do with them, they can recycle them into dog and cat food. And they can make a profit with what is otherwise considered to be waste. All the animal stuff that they didn't sell for direct human consumption. So the question is, will a thriving pet, I don't know, how does a pet industry and cellular food,
Cell-based meat.
All I know right now is that the pet industry, the cat and dog industry, are enormously profitable. And if you watch television, you see how many dog and cat food brands are being advertised all the time. And one of the ways they advertise them is to link your favorite food with what your dog and cat wants to eat. You love chicken, your cat loves chicken. You love only, clean meat products, so does your cat, so does your... So the question is, how would the cell-based meat industry, let's say it replaced or at least largely overtook the regular animal-based industry, how would that...
Karen, speak into the microphone. Hold a microphone.
Yeah, assuming clean meat works out, and assuming it is more profitable, and consequently all of the lowest common denominator meat goes away, so does the pet food industry. The pet food industry, as Karen was indicating, it's the 4D bin. It's the dead, diseased, dying, and disabled animals. It's also euthanized dogs and cats, who we end up feeding to our dogs and cats through the pet food industry. It's just hideous. There are 2 companies, one called Wild Earth and one called Bond Pets, that are focused on doing clean meat pet food. But over time, as meat production shifts completely from industrial animal agriculture and CAFOs to clean meat, the 4D bins go away, and so does the 4D, dead, diseased, dying, and disabled, which are the animals who are turned into pet food.
John.
I'm going to inch 1 millimeter closer to your side on this issue. Thank you.
That's not very far.
That's my compromise. So I had a student who did a paper this last year on the pet food industry, and according to my student, I haven't checked it, but he's a smart kid. If you take all the pet food industry, our cats and dogs would be the 5th largest meat-consuming country in the world.
Wow.
It's huge. It's not some incidental thing. And you look at the number of the billions of birds that are being killed by our cats. This is the one reason that I can think of why having cellular-based or synthetic flesh makes sense. The only one that I can think of. And I would have no objections if it was being marketed simply to obligate carnivores, who cats are. We are not obligate carnivores. There's no reason why we need to be eating meat.
Okay.
So, what has been hypothesized as potentially harmful short and long-term effects of cell-based meat on the human body?
It's identical to industrial animal meat on the human body. I mean, there are the two people who founded the first two companies. Uma Valetti is a cardiologist trained at the Mayo Clinic, and Mark Post, he's a medical doctor who was a professor at Harvard Medical School. But again, this isn't for people who care about the health impact of meat. This is for the 5 to 98% of Americans who continue to eat meat and who ate per capita more meat in 2018 than ever before, and will eat per capita more meat in 2019, even than that.
We have absolutely no idea. And so the short answer is it's probably just as bad, and there may be consequences that we don't know. And you could think in your own life, remember when trans fats were healthy, to replace saturated fat, and then it turned out, just because we hadn't done research, that it actually was more harmful. Or you could think of artificial sweeteners, which are sugar-free, and then it turns out that they both correlate with weight gain and are actually more harmful. So since we've never eaten anything like this, ever, no one knows.
I just want to, everybody who does this, it's going to be biologically identical. I mean, that would be a good reason why. So my reason for pointing out that Mark Post and Uma Valetti are medical doctors is they would like, over time, to tweak this to get rid of some of the bad and focus on the good. And I think what you just said would apply in that instance, because we would be creating something that's different, and maybe it does have the, trans fats is bad, now it's good, or whatever. But at least initially, for regulatory reasons, it will have to be identical. The point at which you start making health claims is the point at which the regulatory hurdles get very, very high. So everybody's talking about creating meat that is biologically identical, at least initially.
Joanne?
Okay, first of all, I am not an expert on clean meat. Pretty much everything I know comes from my daughter, who her degree's in biochemistry, and she's a lifelong vegan. And she did a little bit of research on this, and so I've heard some things from her, but this is not my area of expertise. But one point that she made to me...
Yeah, for some reason is it on?
Is this working? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I just got to really hold it right.
Okay. One point that she made to me that I haven't heard addressed here at all in regards to the health of it is that... God, I've got it out of my lips.
Try this one. Okay. See if that one's better.
Okay.
Abandon this one.
Is that, so cells don't normally divide endlessly in culture. Regular cells divide a certain number of times, and then they die, and they will not keep going. And this is why they have to continually get additional inputs from live animals to do this. Now, they've theorized a way around this, where they would transform the cells, and transformed cells will reproduce endlessly in culture. Now, we have a word for certain kinds of transformed cells. So are we going to be feeding people essentially solid tumors? Is that what we're making here? We don't know, because we don't actually have any science on the finished product. So it's like a whole other category of frankenfood. And if we as vegans stand for health also, are we going to be promoting something that could turn out to have unintended health consequences we can't even imagine?
Okay, let's go to another question. That was good. I'm going to go over here.
Thanks for a great event. I just have a quick comment and two quick comments and a question for Bruce. So the question's for Bruce, the comments are for everyone. So first of all, I just want to say with regard to anger, Leah, I appreciate the idea of not being perceived as angry, but I think most can agree, what drives the passion behind animal activism is moral outrage. If you ever lose the moral outrage, you're out of the game. So if you're not morally outraged, something's wrong. And I'm not saying anyone here is not morally outraged. I'm saying don't lose that. So I don't want to denigrate anger. Secondly, I want to echo something that Vas said. Putting a social justice issue in the hands of the free market to solve, give me an instance where that's worked. I don't know a history of that, okay? Third, there are sentient beings in this equation that are not being discussed, and that's workers who are exploited under capitalism. So when you have any meat industry or vegetable, any industry is going to exploit the workers. So we need to think about all sentient beings, including Homo sapiens. Okay, last, I promise I'll stop. Bruce, I show the film Speciesism in my animal rights class all the time, and you figure prominently that, and I like what you have to say. And one thing you say in that film is, in 200 years, people are going to think about the way that we treat animals, just like the way that we think about people treated slaves 200 years ago. And I get the impression that you don't think that anymore, because it seems like you're saying, look at the graphs, no one's really caring. So my question to you is, do you still believe in 200 years speciesism will be overturned?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really, you know, I'm.
Get it closer to your mouth.
All right, thank you. In short, yeah, I absolutely believe that, and in part, I believe that because I think in 50 years, meat is not going to be associated with an animal product, and the 95 to 98% of people who continue to eat animal meat will be like the people who are insulin dependent, and it doesn't come from an animal product. I really just challenge everybody. Think about the animal suffering on the factory farm. Think about the animal suffering in the slaughterhouse. Ask yourself whether what we have been doing, like, what's the solution? The solution is crush capitalism. How's that going? And can we simultaneously crush capitalism and shift the meat industry to something that doesn't require animal suffering? But yeah, I think we absolutely have right on our side, and I like what Tobias Lienhart says in How to Create a Vegan World. Let's get people out of their cognitive dissonance so they're not sitting down and paying people to torture animals 3 times a day, and then it's going to be a lot easier to talk to them about who animals are and what they need.
Thank you. Yep. To your comments, you know, it's so easy to. I mean, anger, if used appropriately, is absolutely great. I mean, if you can pull anger out of your pocket, use it, and it works, great. But we must put it back, in my opinion. If we just go fueled by anger, all we're going to do is create more problems. As a former rancher's wife that was also complicit to what we were doing, we were killing animals for a living. This is what we did. I grew very sick and tired of it. With the Ranchers Advocacy Program, and I spoke to Bruce about this at the Animal Rights Conference last year. When I first started hearing about clean meat, I'm a new vegan, y'all, 4 years. And when I first started hearing about clean meat, I was like, what? You know, that is bizarre. No way. I am totally against that. Until ranchers started contacting me. And I knew that we had to create solutions. For whatever reason, I am obsessed with creating solutions for your common everyday rancher. Y'all, there's 248,000 farms and ranches in Texas. That isn't the world. That isn't the United States. I'm talking 248,000. They do not know what else to do. Given choices, they would choose something different. If it was economical, if it would work. I love the question, will it work? See, because for me, you know, if you go to my website, you can see it's there. Our top 3 ways to transform farms that we are researching right now, we have scientists on it, we are really working hard, is veganic farming, no animal inputs whatsoever, solar and wind. Those are the top 3 that we're working with. But clean meat is on our website as a potential in the future for ranchers. Imagine when you showed that slide of the vats where there wasn't slaughtered animals. I was like, oh my God. You know, if a rancher, say, that has 5,000 acres, there's one across the street from us at Rowdy Girl Sanctuary, 5,000 acres. They have to be able to make money. And so in my mind, if we can somehow use clean meat, now this is very futuristic, but I think that way. If we could use clean meat on farms, if ranchers had a way to no longer fuel sale barns with thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of animals going into the cell barn from farms and ranches. If we can stop that flow, we are doing something. We can't just keep rescuing one animal at a time. Yeah, it's good to rescue an animal, but we got to rescue ranches. And so if you can rescue a ranch and you can give them an alternative, I think in the future, clean meat for ranchers is going to be amazing, and, we've got to stop it. We've got to stop it. And so I'm looking at it as a way to stop that madness. I also see a lot of points on the other side. I really do. Because that was my original opinion. But I'm trying to figure out solutions for ranchers.
Thank you, Renee. Karen.
Yeah, one quick thing I wanted to say in response to...
Got to hold it right to your mouth.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. In response to Robert's issue about, point about how much human beings, workers, suffer in these various food production operations. To me, if there were no other reason to want to get animals out of slaughterhouses and close down slaughterhouses, I'm an animal rights person. That's my first reason. But when people say, well, I care about humans first, then I say, well, if you really care about humans, and that doesn't mean you're off the hook about animals. You should care about other animals too. But the point is, if you're sincere in really caring about humans, you should never want another human being to ever have to go into a slaughterhouse and spend 8, 10, 12 hours slaughtering animals, having to take drugs because you're so miserable, wading around in blood up to your top of your knees, coercing and forcing terrified, screaming, struggling animals. If people really care about humans, as they claim, that alone would be a sufficient reason for them to choose to be vegan.
Amen. Beautiful. Basile.
Clean in vitro meat is not a valid alternative for farmers. There may be some land that they're able to sell, but they're not going to be able to keep actually farming. You saw those photos. Do those look like farms? What would be an actual alternative for farming would be actually growing vegan alternative plants, which can then be turned into vegan products. Let me make another point. We are living through climate change. The UN just came out with a report. We have less than 12 years, or the results become catastrophic. If, and please double check, what I'm telling you is true, and all the current evidence we have, and it may not be perfect, but it is all we have, says that in vitro meat will lead to equal or greater GHG emissions. If we don't make these changes, they won't be able to farm anything.
Okay, I think we're going to take another question. Another question?
So my question is, I am just confused because I thought the whole idea of clean meat was it was going to be exactly like meat, but different. But not from a slaughtered animal. And now I hear you saying, oh, well, it's all going to come from plants. And so to me, you didn't say that? You didn't say they're going to take a plant cell? The plant serum? They're going to take cells from an animal. Okay, so an animal's still involved somewhere. So a question was asked a while back that I didn't really hear an answer to, and that is, what's going to happen to the animals from which these cells come? How are they going to be grown? How are we going to make sure that they're not harmed? Or is it one cell and then we never need to take another one from an animal?
Yeah, the example I gave of Ian the chicken, where Ian was still running around and they were able to take a cell from the feather and then create the nugget from the feather. So in theory, the cells will keep going and going and going. And I'm not also a scientist on this issue, but do you know the math on how fast they can replicate and how much meat we could produce from this one cell, this one chicken. It can go on and on in theory. We feed it this nutrient base, and then the nutrient base could keep going, like a brewery, like a beer brewery. There's a brewery that continues to feed these cells. The cells continue to replicate. And so in theory, no animal ever, if we get it right, is harmed in this process, ever. Once we get it right, that's what we're going for. And that's, like, as we said, Memphis Meats is going for. They're using a plant-based nutrient to feed those cells, and they're taking the cells from a living animal that's still alive that wasn't harmed.
And anybody who still has questions about FBS, I mean, do read the article on the GFI website. I think it will allay.
Can you say what those acronyms were?
Sorry, fetal bovine serum. If you read the piece on GFI's website, which is pretty easy to find with a Google search, my name and FBS, well, it will pop right up. I think it will allay your concerns. It certainly has been enough for, I don't know of any animal rights group that's against clean meat. And really, I mean, what is if you are the animal on the factory farm or the animal in the slaughterhouse, what is the solution that decreases meat consumption? Was it that, because highest per capita ever in 2018, higher in 2019. What are we not doing now that we're going to do that's going to solve the problem, other than smashing capitalism? And we can do this and that at the same time.
John.
Okay, a few things I just have to respond to. Capitalism is not some exotic or remote issue. Have you been watching the news? You're seeing what's going on in the Congress? You're seeing that, as I said, 2/3 of all the animals on the earth have died because of this system in 40 years, including denizens like the horseshoe crab who arrived here 100 million years before the dinosaurs. This is not some academic-y issue, and how we as a movement articulate our movement to capitalism. It is not some pie-in-the-sky thing. It is relevant to this discussion. And the question of strategy keeps coming up. I want to say I agree the animal rights movement has failed because PETA, basically everyone associates PETA with the animal rights movement, which PETA has done some great things, and it's done some pretty rotten things, and it's really misogynistic, et cetera, et cetera. PETA is not the animal rights movement. And I want to say that you're right to say, well, what do you got? You say to me, I say, you guys, the debate is we're debating your position, so I did not come with a policy paper on how we could transform the animal rights movement, but I want to encourage UPC and other groups to have that debate. Let's have maybe UPC Conscious Eating 2020 strategy for the animal rights movement. This strategy, we are arguing, is a failed strategy. We're not moral purists saying, oh, no, we don't want, it's icky, we don't want... No, we're saying we don't think it's going to work. We don't think it's going to end up doing away with any of this stuff. It's going to lead to decline, perhaps, in animals, but they're still going to be used.
And I just want to add something. Leah and Bruce both suggested in their statements that because they are good people who care a lot, which I don't doubt at all, that we should believe them and we should follow their example, and that because many of the people running these animal rights organizations are good people trying to do the right thing, that means we shouldn't question the ideas they're putting forth. And what I tried to show with my slides and my whole presentation was how frequently horrific harms have been promoted and perpetuated by good people who thought they were doing the right thing. So I think it's not just looking at their character, but to really look at the ideas.
Okay. All right. Let's go on to another question.
Thank you so much for organizing this. Thank you all so much for being here. This has been so interesting, and I've learned so much. I'm just curious, what has worked for you as animal rights activists? What works the best, in your opinion, in each of your lives when it comes to consciousness raising about conscious eating?
Who wants to start? There you go, Karen.
Well, in my case, as president of United Poultry Concerns, who's an avid activist for chickens, turkeys, ducks, and other domesticated fowl in particular, but by extension all animals, I find most effective in my work to be the kind of informed, passionate activist on their behalf that I am. And by that I mean getting people to care about the animals themselves, finding ways, and I can't really teach this. It's something you develop. It's something that maybe is based in your own visceral and emotional connection to the animals for whom you speak, whether all animals or certain types of animals. But to me, if as an animal liberationist or an animal rights activist, we're sort of bypassing the animals, and they're just emblems for more, other matters like the environment or this or that. And we don't really help people to get to see who these animals are in their own right as far as possible, to get them to see and to care enough to want to change. I mean, over all the years that I've been advocating for chickens, I've had so many people in tears when I talked about chickens and turkeys. Or when they read something that I wrote, they said, I just never knew. I didn't realize. I want to be and not in a presumptuous or pretentious way, but I want to be a channel as best I can for these animals to the consciousness of the human being. I want us to never, ever abandon the animals with the idea that, well, people are never really going to care about animals, and especially farmed animals. This is something I have heard through the decades said by animal rights advocates, that nobody is ever going to care about these animals. That's a self-fulfilling negative prophecy of doom. And when we think that way, and that translates into our activism, and then we do not achieve the goal of getting people to care about these animals, to see them, to hear them, to care about them, and that caring translating into positive action on behalf of these animals. For example, not wanting to eat them anymore, not wanting to make them suffer anymore, wanting them to have a life of happiness such as they deserve to have as much as any human being on the planet. We want them to want animals to be happy within their own world of the kinds of animals they are in the kinds of environments where they're going to optimize their lives. But if we have to develop our skills to get people to care about the animals. We have to learn how to articulate their lives in a way that will bring people to tears, that will make people feel it in their gut. Because if you don't feel it in your gut and you only hear it in your head, most people, when it's only a matter of statistics and abstractions, that doesn't really reach people, most people. And I would never, ever suggest that we have to wait for systems to change and that nothing we do in our own lives is going to matter, because we make up these systems. And we're the consumers who are driving capitalism as much as the producers are driving us. So we never want to have a view of ourselves as individuals or communities as disempowered, impotent beings. No matter what you do, no matter whether you buy a chicken anymore or become vegan, it's not really going to matter. Well, I don't subscribe to that viewpoint. I think that's a totally disempowering viewpoint, and it's taking away moral responsibility from each of us for doing the right thing, win or lose, for doing the right thing, for embodying what we believe is the right thing. And if we all collectively say there's nothing we can do until systems change, well, systems aren't going to change unless we change. We have to be that change. So it has to start with us. And
wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, me next. I don't know what I can add. Karen is a great hero of mine. She's who inspired me to love chickens from a very early age as an activist. I have two things that I think it's such a good question. Thank you for what does work? Thank you. What a great question. What has been working? So over my 20 years of activism, there's really one thing I've come to the conclusion that really, really works fastest is finding the win-win solutions. And that's what I'm always looking for. Looking for win-win-win-win-win solutions wherever possible. And that might be like sitting down with my dad, who had a heart attack last year, and saying, I've been talking to him about going plant-based for, a decade, and he had a heart attack, and now I'm like, hey, Dad, remember I told you to go plant-based? it's for health. This is going to heal you. You have to go into this diet thinking it's going to make you better. And then through time, the nail in the coffin for him was that ethical reason. Was then once you've shedded you can't go in with that harsh judgment sometimes. I think people just close down. They won't listen to you. And so going in with like, why would they care? Let me think about this person, their motivations. What's their problem that I need to help solve? So they'll listen to me. And they do always come around to the animal ethical side of things, unless they're a sociopath or something, right? So another example I'll use is Craig Watts, who is is an ex-Purdue factory farmer and he used to raise chickens. And I used to hate factory farmers until I met one. And I sat down with one. And I went into his house in Fairmont, North Carolina, and Renee knows him, and I sat with him. And for the first time ever, I listened to why he became a factory farmer. And he was like a fifth generation, wanted to stay on the land, living in the poorest county in North Carolina, had no other way to have income, wanted to stay on this land. And then he got 22 years into it, and he was an indentured servant, and he hated it every bit as much as I did. He wanted out, but he didn't know how to get out. And I helped him out. Like, we filmed in his barns. We exposed what was going on together. A factory farmer and a vegan advocate walked shoulder to shoulder. We were in the not front page, I wish, New York Times. Nicholas Kristof covered us in the New York Times. Like, it went viral. That was a win because I listened to him and I sat down and I said, you know what? I should be also advocating for this farmer. He's an indentured servant. He's in debt. He can't get out. He's living in a poor county in North Carolina. So I feel like that's what I'm trying to think about with the companies too. Like, how can I find their win-win solution? And that, for me, finding the common ground wherever, and luckily, like, factory farming is horrible for everything, like on the planet and our health. Like, we have so many tools in the toolbox. We just got to pick the one that speaks to the person you're speaking to and build from there until you come around to the nail in the coffin, which is, the ethical argument. And they come around to that. Now, my dad is plant-based now, and I never thought I'd get there.
That's great. Yeah, Craig Watts is vegan now, too. He went vegan, January 1st, which was for Veganuary, and now he's vegan. And yeah, well, there you go. I was right on it. I was like following it. And, and it's, I loved your question too, because it's like, what's working? What is working? And we all need to ask that question for ourselves. What's working for me and us at Rowdy Girl is, our story has gone viral. And what I hope to see happen is other ranchers' stories go viral. Because when other ranchers' stories go viral, we can change Purdue. We can change Cargill. Because when we are stopping the flow of animals into cell barns, and ranchers are going viral, and they're no longer afraid of the integrator, which is like Purdue or Tyson, then we can actually, because y'all, if ranchers are going vegan, CEOs at Cargill can go vegan. I mean, it's, it can happen. It's got to happen. And so for me, what's working for me is to continually tell our story. People come to me all the time in tears about our story. And I'm always moved because that moves me. Humor works a lot for me too. Because I will use, humor because I know some of the things I'm sharing is sad. But, the story is working. And other ranchers converting the Barrett Farm in Wicks, Arkansas. These people took 100,000 chickens every 52 days to slaughter. They are now full-on plant-based Engine 2 diet vegans. Okay? In the heart of Arkansas. And, and now we are doing everything to convert their farm to mushrooms. And their story, once their story starts going viral, and it will, do you think chicken farmers want to stand knee-deep in urine, in feces? Do you think they want to pick up all the culls and throw them in, and kill them, which is what they have to do? Chicken farmers don't want to do this job. They need ways out. And so what's working for me is to continue to believe that there's farmers just like us, just like the Barretts, just like Craig, that want a way out. And when their stories go viral, the industry will listen. I really believe that.
Wonderful.
So I think we have 10 more minutes. So, okay, go ahead.
Okay, on the one hand, we're talking about putting our energy into getting people
You
to go
got to
vegan.
have the microphone really up to your face.
Okay, on the one hand, I'm not saying there's
Still can't hear you, darling. Got to
Oh.
put it right up to your mouth.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. On the one hand, we're talking about putting energy into getting people to go vegan and giving examples about most unlikely people who are choosing to be vegan. But on the other hand, vegan meat, cell-based meat is definitely not vegan. So we seem to have a belief here that's being expressed in how creating the message in an effective way can get the most unlikely people to want to be vegan and to become vegan. But on the other hand, the message here is people are not going to want to go vegan for the most part. So therefore, we need to develop cell-based meat products. So this is just a sort of dichotomy or something that I'm starting to hear now, especially after what you just said.
Yeah, I guess for me, the thing that I have considered to be most important in activism is remembering that 97% of people support kindness toward animals. 95% of people want strong laws to protect animals on factory farms. We all know that's not happening. So this is a point of agreement with people, and we can help them to understand the cognitive dissonance that exists if they are simultaneously saying they care about animals and yet harming animals. I think is a really effective way of having conversations with people. And I think we do need, I've been vegan for 32 years and continue to have conversations with people all the time about veganism. When I travel, I bring one of the THL bumper stickers that says "Happy Vegetarian" and stick it on the rental car. They peel right off. I wear shirts that say "Ask me why I'm vegetarian" and have conversations with people about it all the time. It's a both and, in my opinion. We can simultaneously work to change the zeitgeist, and we can take into account, seeing eye to eye with the Tysons and the Perdue's and others. And those also, they're really they're not in it for cruelty and factory farms and slaughterhouses. They're partly in it for profit, but they really do see what they're doing is feeding the world high quality protein. That's legitimately, if you talk to folks, everybody wants to be seen as a good person. Everybody thinks they are a good person. If we go into it with "you are not a good person," it's going to be a lot harder to have a conversation with them that gets anywhere.
Tell the truth. It sounds simplistic, but I cannot emphasize it the most. There is a movement, a drift in the movement, where I'm a professor of rhetoric and communication, and these books come out with inaccurate or incorrect understanding of our studies, suggesting do things like have stereotypically attractive women, because that theoretically will increase your ability to market the message, or say vegetarian instead of vegan, because we have evidence that suggests that you can have a sliding scale to more veganism. I would say no. Tell the truth. Second, tell your own story. We know from communication rhetoric, as you highlighted, personal narratives are the most effective way to connect with people. People don't feel judged, they relate, they go, hey, I'm like you, and they're far more likely to make that change than any other change. Third, and she is a leader of this, social justice interaction. We can't be a single issue movement. I live in Atlanta. It's a majority African American city. Where I live, I am in biking distance of 6 vegan restaurants, all of whom are African American owned and operated, the majority of which are African American customers. I can tell you 5 are great. The 6th one I haven't been able to go to because every time I go, there's a line that is 3 hours long, and I'm not exaggerating for effect. Its name is Slutty Vegan. Have you been to Slutty Vegan? It's the best. And let me just add, I'm a professor. I teach a class on animals every year. And you have been heard today over and over again how we are failing, how what you're doing isn't accomplishing anything. And I'm here to tell you that I see an energy and an excitement with my students that I've not seen before. and it is about one particular issue. It is about the environment. They come excited about the environment. They want to do something about it. They want to do something personal about it. They've seen Cowspiracy. They've heard the idea. And so they're like, hey, for the environment, I am going vegan. Al Gore went vegan. We have a sea change right now. And I think we need to be leading the call that we have to intersect environmentalism and animal rights, and that what you do can't not be understated.
Okay, we have 5 minutes, and I do want to get to other questions. John?
Well, just very briefly
Okay.
on this question of, about what works for us, right,
Okay.
as activists. Hearing Renee speak, hearing Karen speak works for me, works for my students. Empathy, truth-telling, what I call cognitive ethology, or in other words, explaining to people what and who animals are. That is to say, exploring them as conscious, full persons. That's crucial to this, and they're getting dropped out, as I've been saying, of this discourse, unfortunately. But also exposing people to the atrocities. One of the most effective teaching tools I have was provided for me by you, Bruce, which is Meet Your Meat. That is a brilliant film. I'm sure most of you know it, and that really does work. And I would ask you, the next time you do a TEDx talk, show that film and tackle the question of animal violence, our violence towards animals, head on, instead of seeing it as an embarrassment. We don't want to alienate people and so forth. I agree with you completely. There's data don't have time to quote that suggests that millennials are really energized and interested in where their food comes from, and they're moving towards plant-based foods, millennials. So, as I said, I feel like there's an element of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory here, because we have to keep the faith. This is a moral crusade. It actually is. We're not just trying to change consumer choices. We're trying to transform a civilization. Its whole attitude, not only towards animals, but towards nature and towards workers and towards everything that's being destroyed. It's not going to be solved by cellular meat.
So, Leo, okay, go ahead.
I didn't. Well, you know what? I actually wasn't going to say anything else.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm
sure. Okay.
I just want to say one quick thing is, I just want to remind everyone that we're talking about the world here, not just millennial trends in this country, which are super. I totally agree. Like the plant-based trends, the market is growing. That's awesome. But I've been to China. I've been to India. We've been to these other countries where this is growing, and there's not this excitement and. There is a lot of excitement in India, more than here. That's true, and there's a great history there. But there's growing populations, and countries like Indonesia is the 4th largest consumer of meat in the world. And we're not activists there. There's not. It comes from the United States. Right. Yeah, and it's an exportation. But I just want to say we have to be careful not to take the trends that are happening in this country to mean that they're happening all over the world.
Okay, we're going to take one more question.
So I know from listening to Renee's podcasts, Renee and Ruji's podcasts, that in 2018 that the number of animals slaughtered in the United States went from 9 billion to 10 billion. And I also know that the supply is exceeding the demand. So I just wanted to ask Renee to comment about the Vegan Justice League.
Well, like just this last 3 weeks, there was a lobbyist actually in Congress that's been studying the Ranchers Advocacy Program with our team, and they actually took the Rancher Advocacy Program to Congress. Laura is also with the Vegan Justice League. I met Connie, and I'm really following what she's doing and paying attention to what they're doing, because I really believe we got to hit all angles. And so I look at things like, okay, what is working and which angle over here isn't being focused on. And so obviously lobbying is, oh my God. But she went for 3 weeks. She met with staffers. It was an amazing 3 weeks for her. She's requested $5 million a year to start. She's
Can you just say what it is? It's lobbying for
lobbying for the Ranchers Advocacy Program so that they can actually have the money to convert farms to another way of living.
Thank you.
Okay? In Congress, they're educating the staffers on why it's important to do this because they can be heroes. The senators, the congressmen can all be heroes because farming and ranching there's problems. Dairy farmers are committing suicide. Chicken farmers are wanting a different way of life. I mean, really, it's not a good life. And so they're going to go back to their individual states and be able to offer solutions. And so this is being discussed now. This is a big deal. It needs to be being discussed. And it's going to continue to be discussed. So Connie Spence with the Vegan Justice League is really on top of all that. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Okay, so we are going to have to wrap it up. It is now a little bit after 5 o'clock. Thank you all so much. I wanted to say I feel that this year's conference, I mean, I love them all, of course, but this has been really an amazing conference. We have such an incredible powerhouse panel up here that I think this one really tops them all. So let's really give them a hand.